I'm ready for a white pill. Are you ready for a white pill? After all this time, all of the despair and hopelessness and the I told you so's, it's been a really, really long past few months with, I mean, for those of us on one side of the story, some fairly interesting movements and executive orders and signatures and such. But it's I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the long centuries here. Here we are in AD 2025, and are we yet again going to find ourselves not in the city of God, but living still here in the city of the world? Is there any hope for us? Well, Habemus Papam. Let's find out. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Habemus Papam! Are we happy? Are we happy?
We're cautious,
We're
aren't we?
cautious. We're
Yeah, we're cautiously optimistic, as they say.
yeah. So I was just telling Casey before we started tonight. Guys, when welcome everyone. Welcome. Hi everyone. Um, I confess to a bit of world weariness right now. It's the end of a very long quarter, in the end of a very long first 5 months of a very. How many? Do you feel like has it really only been 5 months of
It's been a
2025? I don't know. I feel
so
like we've lived
yeah,
like 18 years in the last 3 weeks or
there's a
something.
lot going on. There's a lot going on.
Ah.
You, after the inauguration, I felt like every night was like Christmas Eve. What's he going to do tomorrow?
What?
You know?
With Trump, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like
with
every
Trump.
it's, but there is I don't even I feel like so we've had a new pope for 2 weeks.
Yes, which is strange. It's strange. It's only the third pope I remember. Because John Paul II was pope for so long
Mm.
that
Well,
and
there were four then. So there's John Paul
I
II, and then there's Benedict the 16th, and then there's
Benedict
Francis,
16th.
whom you are clearly blotting out, if you're remembering.
Correct. And I'm not blotting out Paul VI because I don't remember him. You know,
No, but it's like John Paul JP2. But doesn't he
mhm,
become Pope in 79?
1978.
78. Okay. Um,
Right.
and yeah, and so not being Catholic until Francis, I'm I had a sort of passive awareness. I sort of John Paul II was Pope for so long, and and
So long.
and
Yeah.
thanks to the Pope Mobile and Saturday Night Live, I guess I was aware of him more than I realized.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and and, and of course, the solidarity and the change in Poland politically.
Yes.
Certainly aware of that. And then I
That's
was
right.
to a certain extent aware of Benedict, um, partly because of the Regensburg Address and the
Right.
kerfuffle that came out of that. But I think by that time I'd already been reading some of his works on liturgy.
Mm.
So, and I've taught a number of Benedict's lectures in my Eurociv class, right? Because he had a very interesting idea about European civilization.
Mhm.
Yeah, so my engagement with the popes, right? I became Catholic. I was received into the church during Francis's pontificate. So do with that what you will. all you people who have been insisting that Francis wasn't really
I,
pope because of
even if he isn't, it counts.
irregularities.
It still counts.
It's
Right? You're not confirmed by the Pope. You're confirmed by your bishop. Usually it's a bishop, your
Yes, well,
local
I was
one.
received by the bishop. It was actually one of our we have lots of bishops in Chicago. And
Right.
I'm forgetting
That's
which one
right.
it was. It wasn't Supich. It was one of his assistants.
George. Was it George? Was it
No, it wasn't
priest?
George.
Okay.
This is embarrassing. The thing is, they're guys' investments. I don't care who they are.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
and
Because it
this is
counts.
well, I no, I this is a nice time to talk about why I never talk about the popes except for when they give lectures that I like to teach in class or something.
Mhm.
That what's interesting. So we talked we've talked a number of times about I go to mass at Cantius, and for the longest time I had no idea what any of their priests' names were. I mean zero, right?
Yeah.
I had some sense of there were different people because
Mm.
I watched them on their live stream and they gave different, flavor sermons and stuff. And one was tall and one
Mhm.
was short and one had a American accent and one, it's like, but otherwise I didn't care. I mean, isn't that the point, right? Are you supposed to care about the personality of your priest? Do we do personality cults in
Well, if it's a bad personality, yes, we do them, which is unfortunate. But
you
if
only
it's a
notice
bad
it if they're
personality,
bad.
no. No, I have seen priests gather. I wouldn't say cult. I would say maybe more like fans around.
Mm,
And they would follow him from parish to parish. But there were other things going on too. I think somebody were talking about science in the Aethazar chat on Telegram, and you said beware the celebrity scientist, and I maybe was like, yeah, but beware the celebrity priest too, because that can be a big problem. you know.
yes, I
Um,
think so. I think it's like the whole point about okay, so before I drifted off on this weave, right? I was thinking about how I advertise our streams on different platforms, right? Just like
mhm.
we made him well, following Milo around and because he kept getting kicked off stuff and adding things, and I added accounts on a lot of platforms that I don't really participate in as much, like Gab. I mean,
Yeah.
we've decided that Telegram is a great place. King Pavel, carry on. Don't bend to those Frenchies, and and let them in the back door. Oh, these are all. Why does it everything sound rude right now? Um, that
Because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. You have a lot to say about it, and
constantly,
it's all
but
it's all trying to explode out at the same
oh
time.
my
I
gosh,
get it.
it's the mosaic is exploding constantly.
Yeah.
We will do our best tonight to stay on topic, but if we can't, just watch the pictures. they're all
They're nice. They're
they're
really
all of
nice
Pope Leo.
pictures. My favorite is the one with his two brothers because it just looks like everybody's family picture from the 1950s. It's really sweet.
Yes, let me see if I hope I did the properties on the manual. Oh no, I need to set this to automatic so they actually start playing. There they go. Okay, well now it's showing him shaking hands with John Paul II.
Yeah,
I
that was
inadvertently
interesting.
froze the I was whatever. Okay, so let me marshal thoughts again. The white pill, right? That I know that I'm frazzled because one it has been a curiously long 5 months. I think
Mhm.
is fair to say, right? It's like in my own like intellectual life of the things I've been writing and the classes I've been teaching and things like that. But just the feeling of I mean the AI never mind the whatever the robots are going to do to us, right? But just the feeling of events because thanks to our president and all of the executive orders that he's passed and all of the the revisions and everything that he's trying to get through before the legal you know bolos grab him and trip his administration or whichever image we're
Right.
going to use right now, right? That the
Mhm.
trying to drag it's little dogs grabbing onto his pants legs and trying to slow him down.
Oh yeah, that's a good image. Yeah, that is exactly what it is. But I have to say, it isn't just the last 5 months. It's really, and this is not the fault of Francis. He
Yeah.
certainly added to it, but it's really the last 12 years. It's something
Yeah.
bad happened when Benedict, in my opinion, partially resigned, um, for reasons I won't go into just because there's too many of them. But so when Francis was elected to sit in his place, just it seemed like everything started exploding domestically and internationally at the same
Mm.
time. Everything bad was happening all the time, and now President Trump is back in office. He's trying to and succeeding, and by the looks of it, in reversing a lot of these bad things that were done and fixing them. And when we get a new pope, people want him to do that right away too. And I got to say, after reading Augustine, ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen right away.
Yes, the Pope is not the president.
Yeah.
Thanks be to God.
Well, the thing is, he
And the
could be a
president is
dictator,
not the Pope, right?
right?
It's like this is
Yeah,
we're actually very happy about this. In case anybody drifted over from my ad on Gab, and you guys, Gab guys, get a grip, right? It's like
yeah.
the number of places so I haven't finished the sentence yet. I post out on Gab and on Telegram and on Facebook and Social Galactic and X. Is that all of them? Oh, and Substack now too, right? And
Yeah.
it's very interesting the different levels of reaction I get to the same ad, right? And in all of those
That is
different
interesting.
places, right? And so I have now trained my X feed is nothing but happy Catholics right now, and raccoons, and occasionally a raccoon in a shoe that looks like a mitre.
Yeah.
So there's some people. One group of the internet is just delighted, right, by Leo,
Hmm.
and Gab is of course generally upset because they don't trust any pope, and they're all, as far as they're concerned, they're all pedophiles and Satanists, and the institution itself should have been burned down yesterday.
And Augustine has
In
something to
tw-
say
in
about
two,
that too.
yes, yes. Casey's done her
Yes, he did.
homework.
Oh, yes, I
She's
have.
doing better than I am keeping things on track, and that's good, right? Yes, exactly. Okay. Oh, no, I'm so happy I've gotten distracted. Facebook. My friends on Facebook are more of a sort of, they're more my age typically, because all the Facebook people
Mm-hmm.
that I know are kind of you know my age and older, and they're
Mm-hmm.
calm, right? They're sort of they're at the moment somewhat more paying attention to the Trump stuff than the Pope stuff. Um, well, Telegram chat. Hi everyone. Social Galactic has not really engaged with my ad, but I think maybe I forgot to put it up on time today. so
I
so
did the
here we
Julian thing.
are. Here we are in this. Is the Pope going to fix everything?
Not in the way people think, right?
Right.
He could be a dictator, but he's not. He's not going to be based upon, well, if we're to compare him to St. Augustine,
Mm,
the cross that he has as Pope contains relics of St. Augustine and St. Monica, his mother.
yeah.
So I think he is very close to the founder of his order. He's an Augustinian. And I do think that's going to mean something.
Which is in
Um,
fact what we want to talk about tonight, right? We have lots of pictures of Pope Leo, but we know basically about as much of we know as much about him as everybody else does, which is nothing.
Correct. I'm still shocked. I'm still shocked that an American was elected because I never thought that would happen because there is real bigotry out there,
Oh
and,
yeah.
and inside the church against Americans. And no, sorry, it's not justified. People are individuals; they need to be judged individually. But I'm still surprised. We have an American Pope. That sounds like a Hollywood movie. That doesn't sound like reality. But here we are.
Yeah, well, in America, a Chicago Pope, a South Side of Chicago Pope. I mean, it's
South
like
side of Chicago Pope.
it
Yeah,
could be it could almost be my neighborhood, right? It's
that's right.
I think he grew up even further south in
Mm.
the some of the working class suburbs, south side. Um, who has okay? So we do know some things. Wow, I can't focus. Help me. Go ahead. You
I'm,
do this.
I'm sorry.
No, you're actually making coherent points, and I'm just at the point where it's like I think Um, all right, so but I have some maybe I guess I want to say this clearly. Guys, I'm so sorry. This is the last week of term right now, and I'm really really tired. I've taught
Oh,
Anglo-Saxon England and Hildegard of Bingen and finished a bunch of writing that I needed to do, and my head's in like 8 different centuries all at the same time, even worse than usual.
that's quotable. My head's in 8 different centuries at the same time. That is you in a nutshell. That,
Yes, yes. So I mean, we went in
yeah.
Anglo-Saxon England. We went from Beowulf being being about an event in the 6th century to being written down in the 11th century. Hildegard's from the 12th century. In De Chemicus, we're reading about the 17th century. The reason that we worry about the modern popes in the way that we do is the 19th century, particularly Leo the 13th, after whom Leo the 14th took his name. We're in the 21st century, and all of these things are happening all at the same time.
It's like we wrote it into being, isn't it? Or maybe we
Yet
we just
again. Yet
did
again.
again, or
Yes.
just
And
recognize that
I'm
all
distressed
of these time periods are swirling around us all the time.
at the pancaking of the internet into, and it's all doomed now, right? It's like I spent way too much time the
Sorry,
past
wasn't it doomed 700 years ago or 1700 years ago
or
or last week?
it's been doomed. It's all the doom all the time.
This is a very slow doom, I have to say.
The rolling doom of
Rolling
the
doom.
end of time.
Yeah, yes.
So that we get to the present pope, and let's talk. Okay. One, we don't tend to talk. Okay, that right. My head's in too many centuries all at the same time, all the time.
Okay.
Two, we don't tend to talk about the popes much at all, even though we are Catholic. You and I, right?
Mhm.
And I do think maybe it's worth sort of reflecting on that a little bit. Like, so there's
Okay.
the temporal, and there's the why we don't talk about the Pope so much. There's, from my perspective as a medievalist with her head in 18 different centuries simultaneously most of the time, and I'll remember the other three if I think about it. Um, I am not. I have not been very happy, having become Catholic, to realize indeed modern Catholics are much more focused on the Pope than pretty much anybody that I study prior.
Now, do you think that's because we have access to information constantly, especially in the last century?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and I think so one of the things that's been going around is there's a video, a film of Leo the 13th, saying he was the oldest person ever, because he was fairly old when the
Oh,
video
right.
the
Leo
movie was made,
correct. Right.
and he's on video. It's not video. It's film, right? He's on film,
It's film.
and so all of these things make a lot of sense, right? That Leo the 13th is the oldest person to be recorded on film, and that changes everything, right? It's like it's our McLuhan moment yet again, of the degree to which the Pope should be someone whom we are focused on, but it's absolutely because of the media environment that we're in now, which is of course
Was
why
Leo?
doing this stream about the Pope
Yeah.
now is totally important. Okay, so that's my sense of time all the time. What was my second one? We don't talk about the Pope very much. Why modern Catholics talk about the Pope all the time, and in the midst of all of this, the sense that we're getting of Pope Leo now. That's our goal for tonight. It's only taken us 20 minutes to articulate it.
Like we said, there's a lot going on, but
Yes.
there's a lot going on. Every pope inherits a mess. Every president inherits a mess. Life is messy. It's never not going to be messy.
Right.
But we're seeing it play out in real time, not just on TV anymore, not just on film, in little computers that we carry around in our pocket that connects us to every bit of information anywhere in the world you could want it. It's too much. So why Americans, Catholics, or basically any Catholics in the Western world at least, with access to all of this technology, why do we talk about the Pope all the time? Because we talk about everything all the time. We
But
talk
we
about
don't.
politics all the
This is
time. We do.
no, this is the thing. It's like that. This is what's been really depressing me because I'm as someone who spends her life thinking about all the time, and worrying about teaching my students to think in fine grained ways about the kinds of evidence that we have and what we do with it. And we in the last, talking about the media environment that we live in now, one, we all talk about the same thing all at once for a day, and that it still
True.
cycles, and then it's still different, and it still feels so flat to me
What do you
that
mean by flat?
um well, drained of significance a lot, right? You and I
Yeah.
have been trying our hardest out here in the internet to like bring some depth for real, right? It's like that's why
Yes.
we're sailing around on the Mosaic Ark. There's depth out there. And of course we're coming up on 3 years of this podcast. Um feeling the feeling of what is it going to take to get people to really feel the depth and richness of what it means to be Christian?
Oh,
It's
silence.
what?
It'll take silence.
Hmm.
They have to sit and listen.
To
There's a
us
lot of noise.
or yes, all the noise. All the
There's a
noise.
lot of noise. They have to sit and listen to God. And I don't mean God's going to audibly talk to people. It almost never happens. But I mean scripture, right? Or contemplative prayer, where you're speaking directly to Him. But you need to be quiet and listen, and just not expect an answer. That's what listening is. You're just listening. You're waiting. That's depth.
So that's good, but that's not okay. That's good, but it's not what I meant. Uh, so it's like we're gonna focus on the Pope and thinking about the Pope, and here we're talking about the Pope, and it's like all of Catholicism is collapsed into Leo the 14th. And no, and the thing, and that's of course the way when the trolls on Gab responded to my ad about tonight, and it's like there's this caricature of critique and venom and hatred,
Hmm.
distrust, and it's I don't respond to the trolls on Gab, so you guys are wasting your time. Although it
But
upset
they
me,
would listen anyway.
well, it obviously upset me, and then I think this demonic chatter that's constantly going on in the background. And here I am wanting to say, no, no, no. I want to say, no, no, no. Don't you know the richness of the tradition? And look, yes, we have these problems in the present or even for the last few decades. But the church is so much more than that. And there's this, you know,
That demonic chatter exists just to prevent people from listening.
yeah,
And it might be literally demonic chatter in some instances, but that's a different topic. Um, People still join in on it when they see it, and like you say, it's more than a lack of depth. It's I can't quite define it. I think demonic chatter said it all. You know?
well, some of it, and this is, um in fact, because like in Substack, right? And it's like I troll around in the internet regularly, and I've been feeling, I don't know whether you've been feeling this or not, but things are getting thinner, right? And this is why I say depth and thinness, and it's like
Mhm.
you spend all this time scrolling. It's like, what are you looking for? Scroll, 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 scroll. What are we looking for? What are we looking for? I see a lot. I mean, I've got X trained to show me lots of animal videos because that at least makes me happy, right?
It's nice.
And and there's nice accounts on them that show architecture and beauty and things like that. But it
Hmm.
it truly does not feel like anything. I mean, as desperate as we are to try to connect stuff to each other, and people are saying, there's all this depressing stuff coming out right now saying people don't read books, and they can't even introduce most high school or college students can't even read the first few chapters of Bleak House and understand what it's saying. No capacity to tell the difference between literal and symbolic language, and you're just
Mm.
feeling like, I've said this before and we've talked about it a lot. There's so much knowledge out here in the internet, in the books, in the media levels that we have. We know all time right now. How can I have my head in all time I mean, like in my class on Hildegard yesterday, I ended up, for reasons that came out because we started talking about AI, showing them a photograph of a statue that we have in the Oriental Institute, now ISAC, on campus, of El, the Canaanite god El, literally God, right? The El in my name, Rachel, as in the
Right.
same El as in Michael and Gabriel and, Israel, right? El, little statue. It's about the size of a Barbie.
Mhm.
And I was showing it to them because we were talking about the problem of idolatry and AI and the,
Yeah.
wanting these robots to come to life and tell us, the reality and the truth. And of course they may take over anyway. And, the kind of terror that we have of when they're intentional and doing stuff that their programmers did. Apparently that's the leap. What I was reading today, the leap happened somewhere in 2017. William Briggs, I think I was reading his. No, maybe it wasn't him. Anyway, that the coders don't actually know why it's working.
Oh, that's
Apparently,
scary.
yeah, great, eh? Right?
That is scary. I mean, I was terrified when I first saw the first Boston Dynamics videos come out, showing the dog. Which, I'm sorry, that just looks terrifying. This,
The it can move and stuff.
yeah, they can move, but it can move really fast.
Mm,
And so can the human-shaped robots they're now making. They can do parkour.
yeah.
It's kind of terrifying looking. So if you pair that with, oh, we don't actually know how it works, Now I'd need to talk to them before I completely give into terror, uh, because I've heard other things like, well, the way airplanes work, it's all theory. We're not exactly sure, right? Like, what do you mean you're not exactly sure? And then you get on an airplane and fly. So I think there's maybe a bit more context to what they might have said, but it's still terrifying when you first hear that.
Well, right. We don't, I mean, to the extent that we don't know why poetry works, right? It just does, right? We understand it and it's enjoyable. And
Yeah,
so, we're
right.
sort of having this sense of connecting things. I was
And we're
talking,
somewhat in control of it, but we realize we don't know how we come up with some of the stuff sometimes. That's just inspiration, but where does that come from, right?
yeah,
So
apparently it's
yeah.
with the LLMs, they were doing sentence completions and then they started having them read not just linearly, but, like more up and down around the page. And then suddenly something
Mm.
changed. And
Or
it,
it learned something.
uh,
Yeah.
well, it started doing, giving output that was faster and more. Uh, it's hard to say what the AI stuff is doing. Um,
Hmm.
but it's distressing because we have on the one hand this world in which the communications are light speed, the knowledge base is enormous. I mean, I do think with the AI, or like with Data Republican, like we need some way of sifting all of this information because otherwise we just can't, right?
Right.
Which is, there's always been more information in the world than human beings could deal with because it's creation. Like
Yeah.
all of it, from the bug size to the galaxy size. There's no way we've never been able to hold it all in our heads, except insofar as we, are made in the image and likeness of God and therefore can contemplate it. But
Hmm.
um, for me, as someone who studies the entire history of, well, the entire history of the church, pretty much, holding that in my mind all the time, to see the sort of squabbling nastiness that has circled around, well, I mean, Francis's papacy has been disturbing on, a number of levels, but this sort of flattening of, in fact, the entire history of the church is always today, is just
Yeah.
wearing, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really distressing and dreary. And guys, I'm happy that my ex shows me beautiful buildings and raccoons, because some of the stuff that people end up squabbling about, even on X, which is fairly Catholic friendly as far as I can tell right now, is so thin
Mm.
on what it is to be Catholic, right? It's like we're saying we should be doing the particular form of the Latin Mass. Yes, it's very beautiful. I go to St. John Cantius because they do the Latin Mass there. But I think, the sort of fighting over whether or not Francis was Pope for the last 12 years has been sad, right? Because it's
It's a
reducing.
distraction.
It feels like it's reducing the role of the Pope to this sort of. This is where I'm not Protestant enough that I don't believe in the apostolic succession. I actually do. I think one of my friends, when I was confirmed, said he remembered when he was confirmed, looking back into the church, and I did this. It was at Easter Vigil at night, and it's dark in the church, and you turn around to be given the chrism, and suddenly see all of the people in the church and say, you belong to not just this church, but 2,000 years of history
Right.
in this moment, right? And it's like this wonderful stretching back in time over the
Yes.
millennia, and
Right.
to be worrying about like when the chain broke. Was it 12 years ago? Was it 60 years ago? Was it, Mel Gibson, sorry, sometime in the 19th century? Was it in 1517? Was it, all of this, the sort of purity spiraling down to, oh yeah, was Peter even Pope? um,
Yeah, I think I've had that argument online with people before. I don't bother now.
well,
It's just dumb. Yeah, I mean the arguments, not the people.
well, it is. I mean, I recognize it is dumb because we're trying on the one hand to say there is really something there. There is really the church, and we feel it, and we're
Mhm.
participating in it, and we're part of it. And then there's this institution that we need, right? With no institution, you do not have continuity of instruction.
Right.
I mean, we're worrying about in American academia right now, right? It's like constantly saying, how are we going
Mhm.
to get back the culture that we've lost? If you don't teach the children how to read,
Right.
you
Or
lose it.
you're
You lose that
well, teaching used to be a vocation
meaning. Yeah.
for people, and now it's a business model, right?
Yeah.
For at least for the universities, it is. This is the whole kerfuffle about, the foreign students, and Trump is saying that Harvard can no longer take in international students. They make a lot of money off international students because they charge a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
for them. And the thing is, they make a lot of money off all the students since the guaranteed student loan program was pushed on every child in America. And then so they got more money from letting more students in. In order to do this, they had to lower standards. But because they were so flush with money, they also lowered their standards, not just for admittance, but for their curriculum. They started
Oh yeah,
having
they have
other
teach
things in there.
algebra at Harvard now. Just like algebra is the seven. I took you're supposed to take algebra in like seventh grade, right?
Yes, I know. Yeah, yeah. That's like remedial stuff. Like the people who graduated. My husband's not from this country. He asked why you have eighth grade graduations here. It's because most of the country never went to high school until about 50 years ago,
Right.
50 or 60 years ago. And it was a big deal to graduate eighth grade.
Well, you'd actually learned
And
algebra by then.
that's right. And a high school diploma 50, 60 years ago was closer to what a lot of college diplomas have become today.
Right.
And that shouldn't be. That should be reversed. Children are a lot smarter and a lot more capable of doing higher work than they're allowed, in my opinion. And I think this is most children, not just some. And I'm not talking about college level stuff. I'm saying stuff my parents and grandparents learned up through the eighth grade. Children of the same age are capable of doing that. Brains have not changed.
Mm. Well, we
They,
worry
they
that
can
they
do it.
have, right? Or that we worry that they will the more we engage with the AI.
Yeah, that's definitely going to make your brain flabby. Right?
Yeah.
It's like using a car for everything or a motorized vehicle instead of walking. Yeah, your muscles are going to get flabby,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean they can't be built back up.
Well, so wondering about this as like what kinds of skills are we going to need to practice to make sure that people don't get just, I mean, like the flabbiness of the elevator in my building had been out for 2 years and they finally turned it back on. And it's like, and I had gotten used 2 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And my
How do you
office is on the
excuse
top
that?
of a tower. which there is a way to get halfway up the stairs, but I've been having to go up all the stairs. Now the elevator's there, and I'm going to take the elevator again because it's 7 flights up.
Yeah,
But
that's pretty amazing. If you
but
walk those.
well, no, I'd usually go up in the middle, so I go up 3 or 4 flights. But the or I walk when I can, or
Mhm.
indeed we're going to have. People are going to get lazy. I just know it. I mean, I've gotten lazy with my arithmetic. I use my calculator. It's there's ways in which we need a white pill. We need some help here. We definitely need some help. Good thing we have a pope. So yeah, right now
Yeah.
we have a lot of people listening, but I think we've depressed them all, right? We just got
Scare
Mel.
them away.
AI consolidates the internet or obsolesces it. Bears suck. No, they don't. Stop it. Bears, go Bears, go Bears. She said.
Oh,
we got the
I love that one. I
popes from
saw that.
Chicago, popes from Chicago 1, popes from Green Bay 0. Ha ha. So now we got the pope with the Swiss guards, I think.
Yeah.
Those are great. Anyway, guys, what we've just done, inadvertently or plan is right. What we wanted to talk about tonight was the one thing that I have heard that anybody has paid attention to, the fact of who Pope Leo is an Augustinian. And of all of the things that I saw about him, I love that he's from Chicago. That's great. I do actually love that he's been working in Peru, because I think this gives him a really good sort of north-south understanding. I love that on the day that he was announced as being chosen as pope, the men who were in the seminary in Peru, where he'd been their boss, were delighted. Right?
I know. It was like watching the World Cup. It was so sweet. They were cheering.
Chicalayo, yeah. Is that how you say it?
I think so. Yeah.
And I was like, it's not almost like Chicago, right? It's like the North and South.
Yeah.
That we, of course, I'm sure everybody knows all of these things too, but it's nice to say them too. That his family's from New Orleans, and he's Creole.
Originally, yeah.
But his grandfather was probably from Sicily. It's like he speaks Italian and Spanish and Latin and English. This is like, could you have picked a better, like more perfect candidate for Pope? This is fabulous. If the Holy Spirit was working in this moment, we get it. It's great. We're very,
Yes.
very happy. And of course, that it seems like, for the last 2 weeks, certainly all the Catholics I know have been just over the moon happy, just like relieved, like, yes, we have a pope that we can, have a church around.
It does feel like that. It feels like relief. Like
massive relief.
Yeah.
Whatever Francis was. I mean, I do mention, I'm so happy we have a new pope, and people say, "Oh, I rather like Francis," and obviously in our side of the internet, maybe not so much. Which is therefore what I recognize that was happening around Francis is Francis did seem to say things that were able to be snapped up by the media and turned into this kind of feeding frenzy, dichotomizing, even when he'd never said it. Right? It's like the kinds of things that were coming out about Francis after he died, and I was like, oh, okay, that sounds better than I'd ever heard. So, like, what have we just been living through? Right? It's a kind of nonsense,
a massive distortion,
nonsense gaslighting, massive distortion, and somehow, for the moment,
you breathe.
Leo is not triggering the trolls, except for on Gab.
No, somebody did try to trigger him though. That was real interesting. I think everybody's had it. Everybody's done with it, whether or not they call themselves an ally or not. Everybody just wants to breathe. So after he was elected, he was walking through the Vatican. I can't remember which place it was, but some young man, I don't know where he's from, tried to get him to grab this big giant rainbow flag.
Oh,
and he just went like that, walked along.
Yes, well, and somebody said actually that's not a rainbow flag. That was something else. Blah blah blah. Yes, but the thing is, whichever he didn't.
But the fact that people that recognized it as a rainbow flag, and he didn't like embrace it, and nobody tried to make anything out of this because everybody's sick of people making stuff out of it. out of stuff like that, I think.
Well, I hope so, right? And
And I
I
think
think
that's a positive. I
well, and
do.
he's been making. I mean, just in our 2 weeks worth of observing, because literally nobody had heard of him before, except for the men in Chiclayo.
I know. I think I had heard of his name mentioned once, like a week or two, or it couldn't have been, well, yeah, a week or two before the election, for the papal election.
Yeah, maybe,
There was
but
a week.
he doesn't have a lot of backstory, which is
No, none.
certain.
It was like a flash, and then it was gone.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, Prevost, who? Oh, well, whatever. I kind of vaguely remember hearing his name. That's all though. It's just a whisper of a rumor.
right.
And then next he's Pope. What? I'm sorry, what? My own husband said the day before the election, he said, "Oh, please, not an American Pope. No, they should never, ever, ever elect an American Pope."
And we have an American Pope. Yeah. So
Guess what?
and he's also one of my friends was interviewed on the day of the election, or I guess he's elected and then they announce him, right? And that my friend was saying that there was more of a delay between the white smoke and the announcement and his coming out on the balcony than usual, and he came out with his speech written, right?
Hmm.
Which took him a little, that was the reason my friend said for the delay, because he's like, he wanted to make sure that he said exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
And that I've seen him since, he seems usually to be using prepared remarks. So he's doing all of this very, very thoughtfully, and, thus far being able to somehow say the right thing in the right moment exquisitely. Right. And refreshingly.
Lovely.
Yeah. That um, so we're curious how he was able to do all that. And the one clue we have, other than all of these things, and that maybe he's a White Sox fan, we don't know. Mel saying Paddington new movie was about 9 from Peru. Yeah, well, yes, of course. The Paddington is from the darkest Peru, right? That
It's a conspiracy.
it's a conspiracy. Yes, this is Paddington is seeded. The
Conspiracy.
Paddington books have seeded it so that we are, receptive to bears from Peru. Who knows,
That's
right?
it. That's
Anyway,
it.
the one thing we have is that he's an Augustinian, and
Hmm.
that for me is, well, makes me one, delighted and happy, because Augustine is like the foundation of Western Catholicism, right? He's the Latin
Yeah.
father that is the father that is. Never mind Aquinas, guys, right? Augustine. Everything is Augustine, but the sense of, well, what that means, right? And we need to help unpack it for everybody, because nobody's going to get it otherwise. The other thing is, of course, that well, actually, I think this is part of the Augustinian, that Leo has already made some comments about, the greatest challenge we're facing right now is the AI,
Yeah. And I'm
and
I'm
is a
real curious
threat
to hear
to
more
our
of your thoughts about
souls.
that.
Yeah.
Did he say that? A
Hmm.
threat to our souls?
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh wow. I want to hear
He's
more about why he thinks that.
right. So, I mean, I'm hoping that he's going to make a long statement that they're going to publish, appropriately soon. But it seems like he's a deliberate man. He's a very, quiet and deliberate in what he comes out with. So we'll
Is
see what comes from it. But what can we take from him that he's Augustinian?
Well, I want to ask, did Leo the 13th, was he the Pope that addressed modernism?
Yes.
That's it. Yeah. Interesting.
Right. So we have, on the one hand, Leo the 13th being the Pope that's, on camera, on film, and that I have not done, I've been busy finishing Termina, so I have not read my Leo lately, or ever, maybe. I mean, I'm sort of, this is what's funny for me about it. I'm like, I'm so not interested in popes as popes in
Hmm.
the way that modernity has been. Um, and I was forgetting about this. In the Middle Ages, they just didn't have that role, right? Occasionally they do, like with Gregory the Great back
Hmm.
in the 6th century, 509 to 590 to 604. Um, and Gregory the Seventh has a big effect, but that's more political in his arguments with the king, or the emperor.
Mhm.
Um, Innocent does, but again, that's, it's more diplomatic, right? He's a lawyer, and he's creates a. Most of the popes in the Middle Ages were, if we have their writings and are quoting them, it's in like decretals. They were lawyers, so they're
Mm.
dealing with the institution, not as I'm racking up, not as great spiritual teachers. They just didn't have that um voice in the church. It's
Mhm.
one of the we were looking at Eugenius. Eugenius the Third was Bernard of Clairvaux's friend, and or Bernard wrote to him, and maybe Eugenius ignored him. But Eugenius does have the distinction of having approved Hildegard's visionary
Mm.
texts. So the popes could have
Mhm.
a bit, or like Innocent the Third approves Saint Francis in his rule, and also Dominic in his rule, that they can have a big effect on what people are able to be teaching and thinking about in terms of their
Mhm.
approval or caution. But they themselves, it's just like they just don't feature in my reading.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it makes sense to me that not every single pope would be this great, deep philosophical thinker necessarily. God, I mean, I don't think Peter was. He
Right,
was
the
he was
fisherman.
right. He was
He's
made the head of a church
got a few
for a
letters from
reason.
him. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it wasn't because he was this deep philosophical thinker. So I mean, some of them are going to be, some of them aren't. I did read some of John Paul II's writings, and mostly he was addressing students. He wasn't
Mm.
addressing it wasn't addressing the faithful necessarily. He was a bit like what Augustine did in what we read today.
Mm-hmm.
He was teaching other catechists how to teach the new Christians. So that's
Right.
and that was like, yeah.
Well, I think
So
John Paul he was responsible for the new catechism, right? The 1994 one. Is it?
1983.
Okay.
Yeah.
The white
Yes.
book, the fat white book.
Right.
Yeah.
He and Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, I think,
Mm.
also was involved in that.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you know that catechism, I'm reading it and going, I know all of this. What's the big deal? Right? I mean,
You
it's fairly traditional in
I think you're
its
right. It is
yeah.
19. I think it was the early 90s. I think you might be right. But yeah, I think the new one was promulgated in 83. But then it was like I don't know. They did something to it and released it in its
Right.
current form in 1994. Yeah, I can't remember why though. I've got both copies, I think. But yeah.
Well, this is the thing that the modern popes, I mean, so you're saying John Paul, but I mean, I think Leo, as I understand it now, what I've learned in the last few weeks is Leo the 13th actually started it in one, the sense of his media presence, I mean, just being like, on camera, I guess, but also the
Yeah.
publishing, and two, that kind of the voice of the Pope as the philosophy of the Church. That he also, Leo the 13th, also has them start teaching Thomas again in the seminaries. So
Interesting.
that the modern church is so Thomistic, is his doing.
Hmm. I wonder why. I wonder why he chose to, and why it had been ditched before.
Well, because it wasn't that big of a deal.
There must be something to it. There must be.
Well, I mean, Thomas he's a very clear thinker and such, but there's a lot of other thinkers. And so you can imagine how
Yeah.
I feel when everybody's like, if they want to interview me about, being a medievalist, and it's like, and Thomas says, and I'm like, thank you. I don't know. I don't read Thomas. I have a
Yeah.
long list of other people whom I read and have thought very deeply about and have, learned from, and theologically, yes, they're harmonious, but Thomas's style is not the only one that people have in learning what it means to be Christian.
Right.
And so, you're right, that I you could see I don't want to talk about this, do I? I
Like
don't
it's
want to.
not a big cause. It's not a big deal.
Well, no, because
Right.
it's like I don't want to talk about the modern popes. I don't want to talk about St. Thomas. I want to tell you about all the medieval, mystics and exegetes and liturgists and prayer life, right? Why do we have to be talking about the Pope all the time?
Because it's on X. It's on Facebook. It's on the news.
Right, but I think
It's
this is,
helpful.
this is a real demonstration of the problem of the media, feeling of now popes can be on television. I mean, in our lifetime, it's been, the television popes and
Well, I think
the here's another statement that all the Catholics have to get upset about and make, statements to the press about what the Pope just said.
yeah, right. Yeah. Why don't you ever ask me how to pray? Right? Why do you fast? It's
Well, not even. I mean, yes, it's like, why did you ask me about something about the previous 2,000 years? Why is it all collapsed into the last 10?
It's collapsed into the last 60, 65 because
Right.
of the Second Vatican Council.
Right.
That's why, and because it was broadcast and largely manipulated by the media.
Right.
And they've been doing that ever since. And then you got a pope from a communist country. I mean, a full-on locked down communist country towards the end of communism's dominance in Eastern Europe. That was kind of huge. And so he was making statements about what it means to be a Catholic. That was directly relevant to how people were being oppressed in his country of origin.
Well, and so you say it's with John Paul that it becomes so political.
Yes, it becomes political because it was something that affected the whole planet, even though it was his own country, Poland, but communism at the time, people don't remember this.
Right.
It affected the whole planet. We were constantly on the verge of World War III. That was a real thing.
Always.
It wasn't exaggerated. That was real.
Guys, climate change is like, this it's going to happen eventually, right? What we grew up with was it's going to happen tomorrow.
Right. And some of us
instant it'll blow up and it's gone and you'll never see it coming.
Some of us literally lived on what would be the front lines when we were children. Right? My mother had to when we moved to Germany, my mother had to get a driver's license. Not every woman had one back in the early 70s. Everybody, I know it's weird. She had to get one because she was the designated driver for 3 families when war would break out.
So yes. Okay. So this is actually helping, right? It's like saying, it's like the feeling that you have of who the Pope is. I will say I have taught some of the documents. See, if I teach it, I know it because I have to have an opinion on it, at least what it says. I have taught some of the Vatican II documents, things like Gaudium et Spes, which is the church in the modern world, and so the church by the 60s, they're worried about, which is an after effect of Leo XIII's statements about what kind of social teaching the church should have, which I do realize I need to read Rerum Novarum. I haven't worked through that before ever, but that he is worrying about what should the church be in this industrial age.
Yes.
And in Vatican II, they're worried about, the aggiornamento, right? They're worried about the updating of the church with, effects like Nostra Aetate, the church's relationship to other faiths. But Gaudium et Spes is a very interesting document because it's rather like a syllabus for social sciences, right? All of the ways in which the church is engaging with the individual, so it's psychology, with the family and marriage, with the economics, the politics, the society, and that the church should be in conversation with the world. They make it like, and to be fair, there's still, when I've taught it with different attitudes, like that there is this thing as a secular world, and that the church realizes it needs to, or was saying it to itself in the 60s, that it needs to be in conversation with it.
I never understood that, because when was the church not ever in conversation with the world?
Well, indeed. Right.
Well, they always were. I've heard people 20 years ago, when I was younger, so I'll say young people, then it was a long time ago, say, oh, the church needs to change with the times. I said, the church doesn't need to change with the times. The church transcends the times. It doesn't matter what the times are. The church is the church.
Right.
But it's always thought like that. So what changed during the Second Vatican Council? They said, well, now we've never done this before. That's not true. we need to engage the world. Well, it's your job to go out and, make disciples of all nations. That's engaging the world. You have your mandate.
Right.
So when did we ever not do that? So
Well, indeed, and
making sense to me.
to me, it's like a trick. It's the same trick as whether we're in AD 2025 or CE 2025. It's the same date,
Right, the
right?
Christian era.
The Christian
Yes,
era.
I'm
The
fine with
world
that.
has always been the cyculum, the age, and
Mm,
indeed that we think of there's being such a thing as the secular world. Guess what, guys? Trick, trick, trick. It's only because we think in terms of heaven and earth, thanks to Christianity, right? There
mhm,
is what you just said, right? That there's, the church participates transcendently in time, but there's the heaven and earth, the cyculum of the age is this earth.
mhm.
All of this is Augustinian, guys. We have just spent an hour using Augustinian terms to talk about everything that we're worried about, right? That we're talking about the problem of communication, the problem of time, the problem of history, the degree to which we find ourselves in history. How do we educate each other in being Christian? What does
Mhm.
what is the responsibility of being Christian? Veil reveal. Okay. So what's interesting about all of this is it would all be understandable if we did any history anymore, if people actually learned any history anymore, if actually they read any Augustine anymore. Um, I do apologize for being so tired. I cannot keep my thoughts
It,
here, and
it's the end. No, it's the end of
it's the end of
of the semester,
well, it's the
and
end of my
you're
year on leave, and I've been thinking really, really hard of talking about all this stuff, and then my teaching these past 2 months has been really intense.
you have a lot of things converging all at once, including a new pope.
Well, including a
So
new pope. But the thing is, for me, it always all fits into the story that I already know, and that's my problem in communication, right? How
mm,
do I communicate? Okay, he's Augustinian. What do we care about that? Why do we care about his Augustinian? Well, Augustine was the greatest teacher ever in the history of the church as a teacher. I think,
mhm.
typically, we've been saying the popes have not been, on the whole, great teachers, right? They just aren't. That's not their role. And, as, the head bishop, they are in charge of various diplomatic levels of things and institution management and keeping the priests, following their own rules and things like that. But
Right.
for actual great teachers in the tradition, Augustine is rightly understood as one of the greats. And it was largely because he was an expert in the media of his own day, which was rhetoric.
Right. Yeah, you really get that looking at his instructions, right?
he was a
Especially at,
he was a
yeah.
teacher of rhetoric. Casey is referring to the homework that I gave her. What we're talking about is, you realize I hadn't told them yet, so you've been referring to a text. They don't know what
I'm
is.
sorry.
And this is the problem. Okay. So, how do you show people what it means to be Christian? Everyone who's despairing that it's impossible to do in our media environment right now should take heart, because it's always been impossible. It's always been very difficult. And it is, interestingly, our commitment to making things make sense that is the cause of our greatest frustration. How's that?
Well said.
So Augustine was, it's like, what people can I talk into any conversation that anybody knows anything in? Never mind whether they could read Bleak House, right?
Mhm.
How many people know who Augustine was? How can I get you into the story of who Augustine was? Well, I have, I tell you a variety of things. I have to tell this over and over and over again, because I've taught this now for going on 30 or 40 years, over and over and over again, telling you the same story each time, new students, the same story, yet again, yet again, yet again.
Mhm.
There's a point to this.
I'm
Short
waiting.
version is, I'm trying to keep it so I can stay on topic. Can I stay on topic? Because I'm so tired, and I've said this so many times. And gee, I wonder how many more times I'm going to have to say it in my life because people aren't born with all this knowledge. It's so frustrating.
Which is exactly what Augustine was getting at in this.
Around the
That's why I
year
like it.
400, not 2025, right? But around the year 400, Augustine, who had, as everyone knows, grown up in North Africa, which was a Roman province at the time, been educated in the liberal arts, so he was like one of the best educated men of his time, had gone to Carthage to become a professor of rhetoric and fallen in with the Manichaeans, so the heretics of his day who believed in like basic dualism. There's a good God and a bad and an evil. The good and evil are real and battle with each other. And the Manichaeans also believe that are they Gnostic in that sense? What
Oh.
Augustine had, he talks about this in his Confessions. He had a lot of trouble understanding how evil wasn't a thing, right? He felt it as an actual opposite reality to good. Anyway, so wanting to have a great career, he goes off to the heart of the empire, to Italy. Ends up not in Rome, but in Milan, which is where the emperor has his court at the time, and manages to hear Ambrose of Milan's teaching, and is inspired because Ambrose reads scripture in a way that Augustine had never heard anyone do, and he explains it to him in these ways that Augustine finally realizes, snob that he is, that it's
He was.
he was intellectually robust. And he converts, first spends some time with a retreat with his friends being philosophical, and writes various treatises on things like music. His mother is caught up with him by this point, after he's abandoned her in Carthage, with her praying to the saints and her hoping that he'll and making various offerings and things like that. She was very, very pious, but embarrassing. He he
Why is
gets
she
he gets
embarrassing?
because she did all of the sort of people devotional things, right? And
She's so Catholic.
she's so Catholic, and she's like the your Catholic mom who's praying for you all the time to come back to the church, and
Yeah.
you're just embarrassed and want to go off to the city and be smart and intellectual and such. And that's what Augustine did, but she caught up with him. And
Can't hide from mom.
eventually they have it. He describes in the Confessions how they have this sort of mystical moment when they ascend together in contemplative conversation. After which he abandons her again. She dies, and he goes back to North Africa and is eventually chosen as bishop there, which means he's given the responsibility to teach people, which means, snob that he is, he ends up writing a lot of lots of commentaries on the Psalms, right? A lot of his sermons are on the Psalms. But he's because he's skilled at rhetoric and skilled at telling people what it means to be Christian, ends up advising his fellow clerics on how to do this. And in AD 400, he gets a letter from one of the deacons in Carthage saying, "Please help me." Have I set this up well enough yet? How do you like my
Yes.
narratio? Right. And
Okay.
the irony of this text, we'll put this in the link so you guys can read it in the New Advent classics. It's the CCEL library, right? It's a classic text. You should have all read it already. How's that for being embarrassing? Where Deo Gratias is saying to Augustine, "I'm so bored of having to tell this again."
Yes. I'm dying of boredom. Yeah.
He really
My
starts
eyes are
to.
bleeding. I can't do this anymore.
And what he's so bored with is people coming to him to be instructed, right? Catechized.
Yes.
Sorry.
Right. And he was having trouble with the students, right? It's like, how do you engage students who, basically their eyes are bleeding?
Yes. Well, what I love
So,
too is they're actually usually, if you imagine the scenario in this, is he's sitting down and they're standing listening to him, because you're in a
yes.
cathedra, right? It's like, what is the chair when the Pope speaks ex cathedra? What does that mean? And no, he doesn't speak infallibly all the time. He only speaks infallibly when he declares dogma, and he's only done it twice.
But that chair can't possibly be around still after 2,000 years,
cathedra.
therefore it doesn't
Well, it's
exist. I heard this. I'm sorry.
well, that would be Peter's chair.
Argument
But the
from,
ex
yeah,
cathedra, it just means from the chair, right? And so
right.
the teachers sit down and the students stand in these scenarios. And so there's one point at which Augustine gives Deo Gratias advice is, if you see they're too tired, give them a seat, because
Yes.
they're standing listening to you. Okay, so you're sitting and the people are listening, and you're saying students, but they're actually simply the people who want to become Christian.
Right.
Right. They're
Right.
the
I am
catechumens,
right.
the
I'm
ones.
saying you're right. And I'm saying students because Augustine's instructing him the way you would instruct a student, right? He's giving kind of the same advice, but yeah, they're
Yes,
catechumens.
they're
The people who
catechumens,
the
and
people want to become Christian and they need to be instructed.
because, and this is this like, what does it mean to be Christian? And I think this is, you can see where my weariness and sadness and, oh my gosh, I have to explain it again, keeps coming from. That, we're out there on the internet all the time, and there's the cacophony of differences of opinions, and well, prove you're Christian and things like that. And the reality, the problem is, which we hope very much Pope Leo understands, because he seems to, right? Because he's coming from this Augustinian perspective, is
Mm-hmm.
you have to instruct people, because Christianity is, it's a, well, what is it, right? We're going to get to that, right? But it's a
Mm-hmm.
thing that you have to have teaching in first. So when I say, all of this, I'm trying to pull all this together, right? I'm constantly aware of the 2,000 years of church history. I really, truly am, right? You need to feel yourself in that thousands of years
Mm-hmm.
of being Christian, right? It's not yesterday. It's not, Baptist, you guys, you're not the only ones who have the story. It's not, just our church or our purity or we're in the story. This is way easier when I've had the students read this text before. And I say, what is Deo Gratias upset about? He's really bored.
Yeah.
What does Augustine tell him about how hard it is to get all this stuff across to people? St.
Well,
Monica, pray for us. Yeah, that would be
yeah.
good.
Well, yes, it's basically, it's like, well, you have to know who you're teaching first. You have to know the person.
Yes. This, okay, and that, right?
Yeah.
Straight up, right? The thing that that Pope Leo has already proven in 2 weeks repeatedly. See, it changes his address to fit the audience.
Right. Because you have to, because you have to understand where they're coming from.
Because you have to
No.
understand where you're coming from. And that is, of all of the things, that's when I teach this, so this on catechizing, right? Of all the things that I want the students to realize is, like, the true Christian tradition, the true, and it's encapsulated with Augustine's teaching, and it's in the West, which is, the thing that we're the West, so we're the bad guys, right? Guess what, guys? The bad guy West is the one that empathizes with your perspective and tries to figure out where you're coming from first,
Right.
so that what we say can make sense. This makes it hard when we're talking to you on live stream and you guys aren't talking in the chat enough. Mel is, so she gets all the instruction, right? If you are if you come to me and you want to become Christian, please, 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 somebody do. I need to know where you're coming from first, right? How do I know how to talk to you if I don't know your own background, your training? I
Right.
will ask my students when they come to office hours. It's like, are you Christian? And it's not like it's a test to see whether or not I can, like, I approve them. It's like, where do I start? I don't know where
Yeah.
to start. I don't know. We don't know where to start in the in this stream when we're talking to the whole internet. What do you know about anything? I need to know.
Yeah. I need to know what you already know, so that when I'm talking to you about something, you're not just pretending to understand from embarrassment or just to get along, but you have to actually know what I'm talking about to get context. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not going to talk. What he would say was, I'm not going to talk to a king the way I would talk to a pauper. because their life experiences are completely different, and one wouldn't understand what the other was, where the other was coming from, what kind of life they had. When Christ was talking and teaching in parables, he was teaching about situations people would understand. Growing wheat, catching fish, things like that.
Right.
Shepherding. People understood that. People knew people that did these things, and that's why he taught the way he did.
Well, you see how, if we start, okay, so we say Augustine defined the West, right? Thanks to Augustine being a brilliant teacher and writing a lot, and doing it in Latin, which is what the West could read, because the Greek East didn't know Augustine terrifically well until recently. That this training in pay attention to where your audience is coming from is ground level, basic for the Western Church, for the Latin Church, which means, I don't know, identity, politics, and perspectives, right? What perspective, what's your lived experience? Where are you coming from? Everything that we are fighting right now, like the short version of what I like when I read the Vatican II documents, everything that we're fighting right now is a misunderstanding of Augustine's teaching.
Or using of it to someone's advantage.
It's like it's the corruption of what Augustine tried to explain to people about the difficulty of understanding,
right?
And that we start from where we have to start from. There's the other layer of it, and again, I'm just so tired.
That's okay.
This is so funny.
Take your time.
It's so Deo Gratias. It's so Deo Gratias. It's like I need to. It's like sitting here saying, I need you to understand this. I need you to understand this. But I've told you so many times.
Right.
And
this is what's going through his head.
That Augustine talks to him about saying, if the cause of your weariness is all of these things, and some of it is, I've told you so many times, I'm boring myself.
Right. I'm so bored.
I'm so bored of this thing. I have taught it so many times, and I need you to understand.
And he can't focus because he gets these flashes of brilliance in the middle. Like, I should tell them this, but I can't. Shoot, no, what? No, where was I again? Right. I needed to get back to this, right? And he's saying, you just ignore those things. You can get into that later.
Well, no, and this
really
is okay.
Stuff.
So one, and this just to anchor this a little bit better, right? Which we can't because we're doing this. This is a demonstration. Everything tonight is a demonstration.
Welcome to her mind.
Welcome to her mind. Welcome to Augustine's mind. Welcome to the mind of the smartest person ever to try to teach people how to tell the story of Christianity. Literally, what Deo Gratias comes to Augustine and asks him for is a narratio, a narration, which if you know, I don't know, your Ciceronian rhetoric, you'll realize it's a particular form of the Ciceronian oration has various parts. Like one, you have to capture the audience's goodwill, the captatio benevolentiae. You have to lay out the problem in the case. The narratio is laying out the story that you're in. And from Augustine's perspective as a teacher of rhetoric, what Deo Gratias is asking for is, how do I tell them the story? But the narratio with the sense of the stakes of the narrative that we're actually in. Do you see how it's like, where should I start? Right? It's like literally Deo Gratias is saying to him, where should I start? Do I start with Peter? Do I start with Gregory the Great? Do I start with Innocent III? Do I start with John Paul II? Do I start with Francis? Where can I actually start in my narration? Because you need to know this in order to know what it means to be a Christian. And yet I've told you so many times.
Yeah, give them basics. Stick to the basics.
It's not the basics. No. This isn't.
No. This is what he was. This is what he was telling Deo Gratias. So he was telling him that you stick to the basics.
No. It's not even that. Right. This is the problem. There aren't any basics.
What he was saying. What he was saying. You don't need rote memorization. Right.
Okay. So this is actually it's like when someone comes to you and says. So it was interesting because earlier in the conversation tonight you said, what does it mean to be able to be Christian? You said you need silence.
Yeah.
Okay, but you don't. But this is. I would say I don't get silence anymore because I have tinnitus. I cannot not hear stuff. now. I got the buzzing in my ears all
But
the time.
when I said you need silence, the buzzing in your ears I was talking about is like, watching CNN or any other type of news and,
Yeah.
engaging in social media. It's all like noise coming through your ears and through your eyes,
Do you think
right?
Would Augustine say that's new?
No, no,
No.
I think he acknowledged it. He said, "I know this is going on. What's going on in your head?" That's when I said that when
Well,
he
not
said,
even in your
I'm,
head, right? They're in Carthage, right? They're surrounded by the
that
city. They're
too,
surrounded by the
that too.
theater and the Colosseum and the entertainments and the vice, right?
Yeah.
What I love having the students read this, and it's like, what's this city like? Is it like all, one, is it full is why in 400 AD is Deo Gratius having to talk to people about being Christian? Because there's a
Because not
lot of
everybody's a Christian
pagans out
yet.
there still. Even
Right.
in the city, they're coming to him to learn what it means to be Christian. And it's difficult for them because they're in the buzzing of all of
So this
the
is
things in the city. It's like we think we're so special and different and edgy and modern. But
mhm.
when you read what these late Roman cities were having to deal with, it's not. I mean, it's still the distractions of this life constantly.
And this is why it's really interesting and important that an Augustinian was just elected as pope. It's somebody who's a teacher, right, by the
Right.
charism of his order. Because before he was elected, but after the pope died, I wish I had remembered this until just now,
Yeah.
because I would have got a copy of it. But there was like I don't know how many 100% increase of inquiries, or
How
Google
to be a
searches that
Catholic? How
how
am
to
I to
become a
be
Catholic.
Catholic? Here they are. They're all coming in. We're gonna say how
They
you
are,
need to be catechized so that you will
right?
understand what it means to be Christian. And of course, thanks to Luther, people think of catechism as a list of questions that you're able to answer by rote. I think that's what you meant about the rote. There's no
Right. No,
in this
right. He
text.
was
There's
saying
no
not to
like
do that.
here do the Q&A so that you can robot repeat back. Get your
Right,
chat
right.
GPT answers ready so that you can say what it means to be Christian.
I want to read my note, darn it. I made a note on this. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. Sorry, I know dead air is just like deadly to any kind of a stream like this.
Well, what's funny is
But
it shouldn't be, right? Because this is live. We're live.
yeah,
We're doing this unscripted and feeling like we've done it a gazillion times before, and yet we still need
okay,
to
I got
get
it.
you guys interested.
Okay, so like I said, so chapter 3 of the full narration to be employed in catechizing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now the notes I wrote down was rote memorization and summation of the Bible is neither needed nor desired.
Right,
So
because Dale Gratius is worrying that he's not telling in enough detail.
right, so certain turning points of history are more important to emphasize, and more time spent on them. Uh, why did I write that word anyway? More time should be spent on the certain turning points of history. Um, um, it says that's it. Yeah. Anyway, the others should be taught, but quickly. Yeah, you still need to teach these things, but I mean, that's why I said stick to the basics, right? Because he
Right,
didn't
but
want
when
rote
people think
memorization,
basics now, they usually think memorize the creed and repeat prayers, which
which is
is
the exact opposite of what he said, right? So the basics
right.
was like, yes, you need to teach the Bible, but actually, emphasize certain more historically significant points of it and tie them together. I think is what he was telling you. That was the advice he was giving them.
Yes, but we're still not to the point where that makes sense. Probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, teach in charity and honest faith because rhetoric and dialectic are less important than truth, which was I thought
Yeah.
an interesting point for somebody who was an expert rhetorician to tell his catechist.
Well,
But
I mean,
yeah,
they're asking in technical rhetorical terms. They're asking for like, what narratio should I give? What story should
right.
I? And the thing is, what he means is, can you give me a sample? It's in a way, Deo Gratias is asking Augustine to be his chat GPT.
Oh, geez, that's perfect.
Right? Because he says, please tell me, give me the thing that I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And okay. So so we got the setting that in there. Darn it. I just can't.
Give me more of my
the
notes.
payoff better be worth it on this one, guys. See, I use Rumble and Spotify and stuff like that, listening to other people have their conversations and their interviews and stuff like that. And the guys sit and they talk into their interviewers for hours and hours and hours, and it just puts me right to sleep.
Yeah.
It's lovely. And then I wake up and they're talking about something else, and then I go back to sleep and I wake up and they're talking about something else. And this is also the internet, right? This sort of flowing stream of
Yes.
conversation. Whereas it's like, when you're a little kid and you can hear the adults and they're sitting and they're talking. I used to love falling asleep just listening to the adults talking. I guess my dad would be there and just,
It's comforting, isn't it?
the dads would be sitting there talking, and you just hear the dads talking, and you're in the stream, in the talking, and there you are in this comfort. I want my Pope to do that. Talk into the stream and give me the story.
That would be nice.
And participate in it. Rather than having to have these bullet points that I have to be able to spit out. Think about bullet point, right? I'm going to spit out and kill you with my bullet of
That's right. They don't call it bullets for nothing, huh?
bullet. Yeah, I'm going to have to shoot you with this deadly rhetorical kill shot. Think about how we talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Rhetorical kill shots. It's gonna silence you in this debate because I've got the exact right, dialectical, scholastic answer definition thing that's gonna stop you in your tracks and knock you over and prove that Catholicism is right.
And there was three themes that kept popping up over and over in this letter: patience, charity, and love. Yep. Right? Dialectic is not going to win people to Christ. Truth is. Truth transcends that. And I said, yeah. Also, yeah. I said, don't expect to understand everything perfectly in this life.
Yeah.
It says if you know a subject well, it may be boring to you, but not to your students. Right. So if you're basically talking about infectious joy, right?
Yes.
If you're joyful, then your students will be too.
Casey did her homework really well.
Thank you. I tried.
You did. Those are his points, right? And what's funny about it is, in order to get you to feel, like, in order for me to feel like I've gotten you to where Augustine wants Deo Gratias to get his catechumens, I can't do that. Why can't I just say the points tonight? This is so interesting.
You're like Deo Gratias.
Well,
the way he felt. He felt, as I had it put here.
I know. The thing is, I usually feel like Augustine in all of this because I'm trying to show you the story. I'm always, if you want to understand my method, I'm always working from this text. In fact, this on catechizing. And the problem is to show you the story that we're in. Right? What does it mean to be Christian for Augustine? And I think if you think about being Christian, and I can say the creed from memory. I'm such a bad Catholic in this sense. I go to, because partly, my first parish when we went through RCIA, and we weren't really drilled on anything, so I don't know, right? I read the catechism. I got about halfway through. I realized I knew all of it anyway because they're quoting from all these texts I already knew, but I didn't like the bullet point version of things. And by the way, I know what the sacraments are. And by the way, I'll argue with you about exactly why there's 7 of them, because Peter Lombard made that list, and blah 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 blah, right? And it, for me, it usually feels like people who, when they want to know what the answer is. So they want to plug me. They want to make me their chat GPT and spit out an answer for them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there isn't one. Not like that. Not
Yeah.
like something you've memorized and can rattle off and then use as a kill shot. I'm not going to give you that. I'm never going to give you that. I can't give you that.
Because you're a scholar, and people aren't used to being or learning how to be a scholar. People are used to learning how to pass tests. And that's largely a function of what the education system in the US became over the last 100 years. People who did the best on their tests, on their SATs, their GPAs were very high. It's because they spit back out at the teacher exactly what the teacher told them. That's the problem with the teachers, not so much the students, right? Better teachers got better results.
This sense of what's the point of teaching is very important.
And it's been hard on the teachers too, because they've had a lot put on them in some states preparing students just for testing, and so their teaching style changes, and I think that has a very bad knock-on effect too.
I love when we've gotten to the point in the way that you guys would be surprised. Well, one, I kind of do this in my teaching because I'm like setting a problem up and trying to get you to the place where you can go, aha, I get it. But it's not going to be because I gave you the answer to start with. It's because I've wrestled you through the problem.
Right.
This sense of what do we want from a pope? What do we want from a pope? What do we want him to like magically give us all the right answers? Do we want him? What do we want from a pope?
I think what people want from a pope right now, based upon everything I'm reading on the internet, all the social media, is they want Pope Godzilla.
But to do what?
They want him to tear down and destroy everything bad, and build back everything up.
Mechanized pope.
Yeah, they do.
Godzilla pope.
Yep. Mecha Godzilla pope. Yeah.
To do
or is that Pope
like to do what? It's like this is an interesting. It's like we want
so
him.
We want him to destroy all the bad things inside the church.
Okay, I mean institutionally he's supposed to be responsible for canon law and
he is
clerical discipline. So
yeah, and he is. Yes, he is.
This is important. Like discipline your guys.
But at the same time, I think as an Augustinian, he's going to look at these as individuals and see a larger arc of history and say these people need to come to repentance. They influence a lot of other people. When they repent, a bunch of other people are going to repent of the things that they've done. They're going to know it's okay to do that.
But so the irony in all of this. Okay, so one, guys, I do have a list of things that I'm going to bullet point at you at the end. Take notes. It will be on the test. Thinking about it's like we want the main thing most people politically seem to want is the Pope to deal with internally to deal with the abuse of the clergy's abuse of itself. And the abuse of the parishioners, the children that have been abused.
Yeah.
And that matters because the church should be better at that kind of discipline than everyone else that's also caught up in the child abuse, for goodness sake. Right? The lies if there's only child abuse in the church.
No, that's absurd.
Yeah, it's absurd.
Especially in the United States, it's far more in public schools than anywhere else. It's shocking.
But
I would love to read.
But other than that, it's like, what is the church supposed to do? I mean, give away all its money, right? It's like it shouldn't have the balconies, and I mean, it has been interesting that Leo is wearing the vestments.
It's like saying give away the White House because it's a waste of money. That White House belongs to everybody. Right.
Right. The church St. Peter's belongs to everyone. Yes. You go and you are there. It's all of Christendom center. right? And I was thinking it's like the power of the Pope is he gets to stand on that balcony, right? Gets that
Mhm.
building on that, in that balcony in that city, Rome, very ancient city.
I'd like to read something if I can,
Sure.
um, related to this. This is out of the chapter because it's exactly what we're talking about right now. It's like, why isn't he cleaning everything up? Right, and do it right now. It's like what people want Trump to do right now. Just make arrests. It's like they have to build a case, people. You know, you
Right.
gotta make arrest somebody that they're going to get, and if they're guilty, they'll get away with it because you jumped the gun.
Right.
But anyway, nevertheless, what ought above all things to be guarded against is that no individual may allow himself to be tempted and deceived by men who are within the Catholic Church itself, and who are borne by it like the chaff that is sustained against the time of its winnowing. For in being patient toward such persons, God has this end in view, namely, to exercise and confirm the faith and prudence of his elect by means of the perverseness of these others. While at the same time, he also takes account of the fact that many of their number make an advance and are converted to the doing of the good pleasure of God with a great impetus, when led to take pity upon their own souls. For not all treasure up for themselves, through the patience of God, wrath in the day of the wrath of his just judgment, but many are brought by the same patience of the Almighty to the most wholesome pain of repentance. And until that is effected, they are made the means of exercising not only the forbearance, but also the compassion of those who are already holding by the right way. Accordingly, you will have to witness many drunkards, covetous men, deceivers, gamesters, adulterers, fornicators, men who bind upon their persons sacrilegious charms, and others given up to sorcerers and astrologers, and diviners practiced in all kinds of impious arts. You will also have to observe how those very crowds which fill the theaters on the festal days of the pagans also fill the churches on the festal days of the Christians. And when you see these things, you will be tempted to imitate them. Nay, why should I use the expression you will see in reference to what you assuredly are acquainted with even already? For you are not ignorant of the fact that many who are called Christians engage in all these evil things which I have briefly mentioned. Neither are you ignorant that at times, perchance, men whom you know to bear the name of Christians are guilty of even more grievous offenses than these. But if you have come with the notion that you may do such things as in a secure position, you are greatly in error. Neither will the name of Christ be of any avail to you when he begins to judge in utmost strictness, who also of old condescended in utmost mercy to come to man's relief. For he himself has foretold these things, and speaks to this effect in the gospel. Not everyone that says unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father. So
Yes.
he was,
Guess what,
yeah,
Gab? You're not the first ones to notice that not everybody who calls
no,
himself Christian isn't perfect.
right. It's because
And the
right,
thing is, it was very topical that they were in North Africa at the time, because there was a sect of people, the Donatists, who 100 years before that, when the church had been being persecuted by the emperors before Constantine, um, the Donatists were the ones that kept they were the pure ones, right? And they considered, once the emperors convert and it's less dangerous to be Christian, topical, um, people
mm,
fled back into the church. The Donatists wanted to keep their purity, right? The
mm,
purity spiral, everybody that's been in the purity spiral has not been paying attention to what Augustine said, is we're mixed in together the whole time. And I mean, this is
right.
Augustine's writing this before he writes The City of God, but his great insight is, of course, the good and the evil are mixed together in this life.
And in the church,
This,
because the church is life.
right,
It's the world.
it's the cyculum, it's the age, right? So
Right.
interestingly, when I teach Vatican II, and we read Speculum Gaudium et Spes, and we've read Augustine at the beginning, I say, look, see, here it is again, the two cities. The city of God is the heavenly city towards which we yearn. The city of the world is the one that we're mixed up with right now. And the good
Right.
and the evil, he says this, the good and the evil will coexist throughout history.
Yes.
That we the desire to have the perfect church in this life
Right.
is itself a perversion of what in
Right.
fact we see in the scriptures, is that the church is mingled. The church is the church militant because it's mingled up with all of these temptations.
What Christ said, you let the wheat grow together with the tares,
There you go.
right? Because you can't tell what they are when they're babies. You have to let them grow, right?
Right.
Now this doesn't mean the Pope shouldn't police the priesthood. He should.
He
That's his
should.
job, like you said.
It's
But
his one main job, right?
right, it's
He's
right.
the head of that institution, and he needs to
What
police the people in it.
what Augustine is saying is that's not an excuse to leave.
Right.
That's no excuse at all because evil is going to exist everywhere. Get used to it, fight against it through prayer and sacrifice and yeah.
Right. Have I gotten to the? I can't tell whether we're at the beginning or the end or the middle, which is the problem. Which is, where do I begin? Where no, Deo Grazia is saying to Augustine, where do I begin? I'm still trying to get to the point where I wanted to begin, which is where Augustine begins. Is how hard it is. Right. So he's saying, and I'm hoping this works in this particular stream right now in our Augustinian demonstration. Deo Gratia's, he's had people coming to him and asking him, what do I need to know to be Christian? And he's worried. He's very, very worried because his own, I feel like I put on this character too effectively in myself, right? How it often happens that a discourse which gives pleasure to the hearer is distasteful to the speaker.
Not again. I have to read this again.
And what explanation is to be offered of that fact? So you say, that Deo Gratias, as I am tonight, right? I'm too. The method acting here is too intense. That I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because I know I understand all of these things, and I wish so much I could explain everything to you guys. And I wish that as I see it and it flashes in my understanding and it's there and I get it. And why can't I, even in our instantaneous internet moment, right? Give it to you, right? This. Why can't I just flash? And this is a sort of temptation of the AI that everybody wants to, like, plug me in and I'll get it all. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Why can't I just give you that understanding? And Augustine is saying, is like, indeed with me too, it's almost always the fact that my speech displeases myself.
Mm.
I'm with him tonight. For I am covetous of something better, the possession of which I frequently enjoy within me before I commence to body it forth in intelligible words. I always, no, not, the thing is, I'm often wrestling with the idea, but it was like, I got it, I want to tell you. And then, when my capacities of expression prove inferior to my inner apprehensions, I grieve over the inability which my tongue has betrayed in answering my heart. For it is my wish that he who hears me should have the same complete understanding of the subject what I have myself. And I perceive that I fail to speak in a manner calculated to effect that, and that this arises mainly from the circumstance that the intellectual apprehension diffuses itself through the mind with something like a rapid flash, whereas the utterance is slow and occupies time and is of a vastly different nature, so that while this latter is moving on, the intellectual apprehension has already withdrawn itself within its secret abodes. What was I talking about? It's like, this passage is one of my absolute favorites because it describes the problem all the time. You've got this insight, you've got this moment, but to get it across to you guys, to explain it to you, takes time. Right. And the time is also our incarnate time, our being in this constantly. It gets worse. Right. Yet in consequence of its having stamped certain impressions of itself in a marvelous manner upon the memory, these prints endure with the brief pauses of the syllables. And as the outcome of these same impressions, we inform intelligible signs, which get the name of a certain language, either the Latin or the Greek or the Hebrew or some other. And these signs may be objects of thought, or they may be actually uttered by the voice. On the other hand, however, the impression themselves are neither Latin nor Greek nor Hebrew, nor peculiar to any other race whatsoever, but are made good in the mind just as looks are in the body. So I mean, one, we talked about how Leo has multiple languages, right?
Yes.
But there's also but he's also been very good at the nonverbal stuff, which is what Augustine gets to now too. That it takes time to express our thoughts, but the thoughts don't necessarily, and there's a lot of cognitive psychology in here. The thoughts themselves don't necessarily take particular linguistic forms because there's other things that are happening that we also understand. Um, uh, for he says, for example, for anger is designated by one word in Latin, by another in Greek, and by different terms in other languages, according to their several diversities. But the look of the angry man is neither peculiarly Latin nor peculiarly Greek. Thus it is that when a person says iratus sum, he is not understood by every nation, but only by the Latins. Whereas if the mood of his mind when it is kindling to wrath comes forth upon the face and affects the look, all who have the individual within their view understand that he is angry, right?
Mhm.
So we have their facial I'm reading a lot right now in Joe Navarro's books on body language, right? It's like
Ah,
most of our communication is nonverbal,
right.
and yet this flash of understanding that we have to convey it takes words, but even as we're speaking the words, we we know that the flash is not in the words. But again,
Right.
it is not in our power to bring out those impressions which the intellectual apprehension stamps upon the memory, and to hold them forth, as it were, to the perception of the hearers by means of the sound of the voice, in any manner parallel to the clear and evident form in which the look appears. We can do things quicker with our facial expressions than we can with our words. For the former within the mind, while this latter is without in the body. Wherefore we have to surmise how far the sound of our mouth must be from representing that stroke of the intelligence, seeing that it does not correspond even with the impression produced upon the memory. Now, it is a common occurrence with us that, in the ardent desire to effect what is of profit to our hearer, our aim is to express ourselves to him exactly as our intellectual apprehension is at the time, when in the very effort we are failing in the ability to speak. And then, because this does not succeed with us, we are vexed, and we pine in weariness, as if we were applying ourselves to vain labors, and as the result of this very weariness, our discourse itself becomes more languid and pointless, even than if it was when it first induced such a sense of tediousness.
He's blackpilling.
Well, this is the opening, right? He's saying, yes, I get it. It's really hard to
Yeah.
communicate. And not just, I
Yeah.
mean, just communicate. It's like the thing that I understand, the phrase is ictus intelligentiae, right? This flash of understanding. I get it. I get it. I
Mhm.
get it. How can I convey it to you?
Why can't, yeah.
It takes
Why
so
can't I
much
describe it?
time to carry
Yeah.
this off. I mean, it's like we're now at 9:44 p.m., right? It's like we've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes, and I'm so frustrated at how long it takes me to express to you what I understand like that when I see Pope Leo on the balcony, right? It's like,
What do you
whew,
see?
there it
When you saw
is.
Pope Leo on the
Right.
balcony, what did you see?
All of this, right? When I saw Pope Leo on the balcony, I saw the whole history of the church. I saw everything
Wow.
about being in time. I saw the problems with, the church of the city of God versus the city of the world. I saw the problems with, the 19th century and the media that they had then, and the 20th century and the media we had then, and the 21st century and the media. All of it, right there.
You know what I saw?
What?
I saw a Pope because he was dressed like one. That's important.
Yes, yes,
That's very
because
important. That's why
he
we have
knows,
these.
I mean, it's like on the balcony, dressed like a pope.
And I
There.
think that's why people are feeling like they can breathe, right? Because there's no
Yes.
question. There's no question for the first time in 13 years. There's no question at all. Oh, that's a Pope. There's the Pope. He was just elected and he's dressed like a Pope and he's giving people a blessing, and it's like, let me
There,
just
you said it.
breathe out
Yeah.
here, but like you said, or like St. Augustine just said, you communicate with your whole body, with your face and your body and your expressions and your emotions and occasionally your words, right?
Well,
But
it's
it
so
says a
it's
lot.
some of, we have this occasionally in our slides tonight we've had words. We cannot build a just society if we discard the weakest whether the child in the womb or the elderly in their frailty, for they are both gifts from God. That
That's beautiful.
Provost and now Pope Leo has said things that people are latching onto, but I think you that's it. He appeared as Pope. He wore the
Right.
clothes. He gave us that flash of I mean, but one, that Augustine as a rhetorician actually understood all of the. I mean, he understands the body. He understands the problem of the expression, but he also understood. I mean, and this is why it's like I'm very happy that Leo. He's going to be the most intellectual pope that makes sense, right? That
Yeah.
you can adapt.
John Paul II was a hard read sometimes.
Well, this is it's a hard translation, but yes, Augustine is he's a very involved thinker, right? To get to this
Mm,
point of it's love, which is what
yes.
Leo said when he came out. He's saying we are one,
Yes.
and he used some Augustinian phrase that was, but it's like Deo gratias what Augustine wants Deo gratias to get to the point is all of this doesn't matter if you're doing it with your your anxiety is from this desire, but it's with love. You're trying to teach with love.
Right.
And yet you still have to tell everybody this full narration because you need them to understand that they are in this story.
Yes.
This is not the catechizing for Augustine is not about ticking off the bullet points. It's about knowing yourself in the story that begins with creation and ends with the resurrection
Yes.
and the heavenly Jerusalem. And we are in
Right.
that. We are in time. That Augustine, of all of the thinkers that we have in our tradition, is the one most attentive to history.
Yeah, and that was a real interesting part of this assignment that I read was the way in which Augustine he kind of wove together past, present, and future all together
Right.
when he talked about the resurrection. I mean, it was almost dismissive, like, yeah, the body dies, but it comes back because God said so, and that's it. That's the resurrection, you know. And it seemed like he was talking about something that was going to happen tomorrow, but it happened yesterday. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Something that already happened because God, and it did because he's thinking the way God thinks and like helping people to see the way God sees, which is everything all at once.
Well, God,
He's
yes. So
outside of
God
time.
sees everything all at once,
Yes,
and we have to experience it in time,
right.
and that
But
our
he,
understanding comes in time, and our understanding comes with this. I mean, it's interesting because it's almost just like all of the things that people have been constantly saying about. It's like, why isn't it fixed already, right?
right. Why isn't it fixed already?
Why
Right.
isn't it
So
fixed already? Why are we having to suffer all of this? Why isn't it fixed already? That sort of the sort of childish impatience. No, it's not even
yes, and this is
childish. It's like we got the children now. We got the brothers right now, right?
yeah.
It's
Oh,
the
I like that
we
picture.
want the answer now, and we want
Yeah,
you to be our power guy now, and we want the sort of
yeah. I mean, yeah. He's reminding them that like as you said, you have to talk. You're doing this in time, and it feels horribly slow because you're having these brilliant flashes that take no time at all in your head and
mm-hmm,
you can't articulate them. But in the grand scheme of things, the only thing that matters is love, God.
right.
That's it, right? Even your body doesn't matter. God could resurrect it like that, and He will. So it's almost like He was reminding you that time exists, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. Only God matters. And you need to remember that when you're teaching the catechumens.
And the patience that you need, so patience.
Patience, lots of patience. He said, I almost did a word count. He said the word patience a lot.
This is my other favorite
Yeah.
passage. For if the cause of our sadness lies in the circumstance that our hearer does not apprehend what we mean, so that we have to come down in a certain fashion from the elevation of our own conceptions and are under the necessity of dwelling long in the tedious processes of syllables which come from far beneath the standard of our ideas, and have anxiously to consider how that which we ourselves take in with the most rapid draught of mental apprehension is to be given forth by the mouth of flesh in the long and perplexed intricacies of its method of enunciation. And if the great dissimilarity thus felt between our utterance and our thought makes it distasteful for us to speak, and a pleasure to us to keep silence, then let us ponder what has been set before us by him who has, quote, showed us an example that we should follow his steps. For however much our articulate speech may differ from the vivacity of our intelligence, much greater is the difference of the flesh of mortality from the equality of God. And nevertheless, quote, although he was in the same form, he emptied himself, taking the form of the servant, and so on down to the words, the death of the cross. He doesn't quote the whole passage. What is the explanation of this but that he made himself, quote, weak to the weak in order that he might gain the weak? Listen to his followers. He expresses himself also in another place to this effect. He's quoting Paul. For whether we be beside ourselves, it is to God, or whether we be sober, it is for your cause. For the love of Christ constrains us, because we judge that he died for all. And how indeed should one be ready to be spent for their souls, if he should find it irksome to him to bend himself to their ears? For this reason, therefore, he became a little child in the midst of us, and like a nurse cherishing her children. For is it a pleasure to list short and broken words unless love invites us? And yet men desire to have infants to whom they have to do that kind of service, and it is a sweeter thing to a mother to put small morsels of masticated food into her little son's mouth than to eat up and devour larger pieces herself. In like manner, accordingly, let not the thought of the hen recede from your heart, who covers her tender brood with her drooping feathers, and with broken voice calls her chirping young ones to her, while they turn away from her fostering wings in their pride and become a prey to birds. For if intelligence brings delight in its purest recesses, it should also be a delight to us to have an intelligent understanding of the manner in which charity, the more complacently it descends to the lowest objects, finds its way back, and with all the greater vigor to those that are most secret, along the course of a good conscience, which witnesses that it has sought nothing from those to whom it has descended, except their everlasting salvation. If you find yourself impatient at how boring and stupid people are, just think how God feels.
Right.
Talk about having to adapt yourself to the your audience's capacity. He became incarnate in time to talk to us, right? And that like this, Augustine's just going, really get a grip. Who are you to think you are above teaching?
Yeah. If only you could see yourself how God sees you. He's like, oh, so cute. He's trying to think. Oh.
Bless their hearts. Oh wait, I made their hearts. Right.
I know. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah.
So yes, I love that passage between the two, right? It's like saying, yes, I get it. You're so smart. And these flashes of understanding come to you and it's so wearisome and boring. But God became incarnate to talk with us, right? So that it's easy to get snarky and high on my horse and all of the things because I know so much more than you guys do. right. And there's layers and layers and layers I like here about that. Leo is an Augustinian, but this is already what I've seen is that he's performing like Augustine, right? He's adapting his dress to his audience, and this is important for his being in Peru too, because the Spanish were very Augustinian in their missionizing in the New World, particularly in Latin America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they knew this text, right? This was one of their favorite. On the Catechizing was one of their favorite missionizing texts, and in fact, had been one of the favorite texts throughout the Middle Ages. Alcuin uses it to chastise Charlemagne for thinking that he can baptize people by herding them all into a river and saying, "Baptize or death." Because in fact, Christians are meant to teach, right? It's like we catechizing simply, it's on instruction. It's on the instruction. You have the patience, the patience, the patience. Pope Leo already strikes me as someone who's very patient. He just looks, he's
He
just like,
does, yeah.
he's incredibly patient.
I think people are really responding to that. He seems very genuine and patient, like you said.
Very genuine and patient. That the men at the seminary where he was in Peru were so happy. That's great. That's the school, right?
Yeah,
He's clearly got the love of his students who he's been instructing. But this mode of Augustinian engagement with the other, right, in all of our talk, right? It's like and there's more in this text, and maybe we'll come back and read some more of it, right? But Augustine goes through very, very carefully for Deo Gratias and saying, like, you have to adapt yourself. For example, if your audience knows the liberal arts, you have to talk to the people that have a university education one way, whereas if you
hmm
have to talk to, he says, like, if they have rhetoric or grammar, that's more like, the business world, right? You have to, like,
yeah,
do they know how to speak, their patterns stuff? You have to adapt to that. Have they been reading other books, right? It's like there's some really great passages where Augustine talks about, find out what they've been reading. And if it's been reading, the heretic stuff, you need to, like, explain to them why that's not great.
yes,
Because they're
yeah,
going to come to you all proud that they've done a lot of reading, and maybe or maybe not, they know what the right books are to be reading. But
right.
always, always, always with love, with
hmm
patience, with adapt yourself to their capacities, because, and I use this text in my first book, in From Judgment to Passion, to talk about what I think happened with the conversion of the Saxons under the Carolingians. Um, that you are the enculturation is also the capacity here, right? It's like, what are you going to need to know from their culture to help them understand what you're trying to show them about Christ, and
Right.
our creation, our participation in the story. That the church in Latin America did that better than the Protestants who came and settled in the English colonies did.
Yeah.
Is a bit telling.
Right.
Right.
Right. Because I mean, the English Protestants were very authoritative. It's like this is uh, this is the English way we're going to do it, and now you're going to do it this way. Right.
And of course, the Protestant churches are tied to their politics in a way that the
Yeah.
Catholic Church has always been at odds with, which is why, it's like that Augustine gave the instruction that, the city of God and the city of the world, you don't know who belongs to the city of God in this life, right? The passage that
Right.
you read, we're all mixed up together.
hmm
And that the earthly rulers are of this world, right? They're of the saeculum, they're secular, whereas the church is, of eternity, and participates in that, but is all mixed in. It's like, again, it's like, remember what the incarnation meant. God entered into our embodied incarnate slowness.
Yeah. It's the Catholic Church. Here comes everybody. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are from, they deal with the, okay, we had the Bears one again, right? They've been cycling through that you can see a hope, it's like, see in Leo's affect and his performance and his, nonverbal expressions, all of these things that Augustine is also trying to help Deo Gratias realize as part of his teaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought of something really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so as you mentioned the Spanish and a very Augustinian way of teaching the native populations when they came to the Americas. The first city in America is named St. Augustine.
There we go.
The first Mass in America and the first Thanksgiving was in St. Augustine, now Florida. Yeah, the state of Florida. And now
nicely
we have an
nicely anchored, and now we have an Augustinian
yeah,
pope
now we have an Augustinian Pope.
who we deeply hope. I mean, this is obviously why I'm very happy that he is. I mean, I think, not the thing that he's saying, he recognizes the challenge to AI. He's like, he understands the challenge to teaching and education, and the effects on our souls of our understanding. That, I mean, one, Augustine is. I don't know whether Leo knows this text, as well as I hope I do, but this kind of effect, that this sort of effect of understanding in time runs throughout all of Augustine's works. That
Hmm.
it's like his confessions are about how he came in his own life to understanding, right? And it took him years. It took him decades of his mother
Yeah.
praying and
I've never read that, and you make me want to read it saying that.
it
So
makes me want to reread it for sure. It's been a long
I
time
want to
since I
read
read
it.
it. And then his great book, The City of God, is all about, again, history. It's about time. It's about the process in time. And the challenge, the AI, as I said, is like people want to, they want to stick questions in me and get AI answers out.
Yeah.
Deo Gratias was asking Augustine for, like, give me an oratio, and Augustine writes him a sample one. Okay, here's your sample one. It's like what you get when you ask Chat GPT or Grok or something. I need an
Right.
oratio to help people be Christian, but the whole point is you still have to perform it in
Yes.
our actual human engagement with each other, because it's not
Hmm.
just going to happen blango in your head. um, maybe our understanding comes from God like that, but it's still in our communication with each other is through language and time and the struggling with different languages and comprehension.
Hmm.
And I get the AI people want impatiently to not have to do this. They want never to be
Yeah.
tired, and they want never to find it difficult to have these moments of engagement with each other. I do
So
think
they
I
want heaven.
Yes, basically. I mean, in that sense, but it's demonic because we're not in heaven now.
Oh, it's a
We're
right. It's a
incarnate.
fake.
You
It's a
want to
fake, like
be you
I.
want to be the you want to the demons are also able to communicate instantaneously.
Hmm. That's right.
Yeah. We can look what Augustine says about the fall of the angels in another context, right? Because he describes it in the city of God, and that's therefore a part of our, like, where are we in the story and our understanding.
Hmm.
But all of this gives me a good deal of hope for who Leo is going to be as Pope, because he seems to have engaged with this formation, as we say, the Augustinian formation, in already. I feel
Hmm.
it. I feel it. I
Yes.
feel it. I got
Yeah,
the
I can
ictus
see that.
intelligentsia that he's there. So I think we right now we have, hi guys, surreal nil mil. What happened to you? Left behind 11 days, 6 days. I think he's talking about X there. That's irrelevant. Okay. For posting memes. Mel is saying Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and all the angels and saints baptize all the nations in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Ever ancient, ever new. We are in time. We are in the story. We're going to have to keep struggling with this to find ourselves in that narratio. But the story that we are in is the truth. It's the year of our Lord 2025, and we are here in the age to learn about God's love for us. We're now we're past our time, so we can stop now.
And she can sleep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing is, I finally did clarify up there when I got to the point where I can explain what I wanted to show you. But this was, I mean, it's like it was a very interesting method moment. How where that came from, I don't know, because I did go into this stream thinking I'm going to explain to them what Augustine says about being in time, and instead I had to, like, live it for you. The frustration
You
of
see, you taught by demonstration.
what it's like to have it all in your understanding and it take years of rehearsing it to help people find themselves in that story. So maybe we should actually tell you what the story is, but we ran out of time tonight.
We'll revisit, especially if he writes something really big, our Pope, on AI. I'm looking forward to reading that.
We definitely should. I now that we've introduced our sense of the Pope and the
Hmm.
frustration that we have about the way people have used the popes, maybe I'm capable. I'm cleansed now of the frustration, like Deo Gratias, right? I can go back in and figure out. I don't know. I mean, the popes are in time too, right? And I think the things that we're
Hmm.
able to see through their engagement as popes with the different media are important and part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we're at a place now where we can find ourselves in the story and take on that lesson. Final words. Oh, we got the Pope looking at Mary right now. That's good.
Oh. No, no final words.
No final words. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Like, subscribe, follow us on the Mosaic Arc. We will be here searching the deeps. Good night.